Athletics, Ryan Bamford, and go from there. Please make sure you're muted unless you are asking a question. Please use the raise hand function to ask your questions. Thank you. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks, Jill. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. Wanted to make sure that we, Alex and I connected, answered any questions you had. I'll just have a brief opening statement. Obviously middle of November here, and wasn't anticipating having to make a coaching change, but felt like at this point in our season and with some things from just a progressive standpoint of our football program and not seeing some of the progress that we wanted on the field, we decided to make a change on Saturday or on Sunday, I should say. And I want to thank Walt for his service to this university. He came into a challenging situation 3 years ago now, and really was able to develop a number of things in our program to our benefit, to the program's benefit as we currently stand. And I give him a lot of credit for really paying attention to the culture, the type of young men that we brought into the program. And I think we've seen that in the way that we've competed in the classroom, our team GPA, our academic progress scores for the NCAA the last 3 years. And then a number of things just from a community and citizenship standpoint that we're very pleased with. So Walt did work extremely hard in a challenging environment, a challenging situation. And there's been a lot of things thrown at us the last 3 years. Obviously the pandemic that we're still sort of in, but the challenge of having a football program in the middle of the pandemic last fall and not having spring football the spring prior, not having a full summer of conditioning and lifting and prep was a challenge. And then obviously only playing 4 games last year was extremely challenging as well, when most of our peers were playing double or triple that. So a lot of things that occurred over the last 3 years seem to be impediments to our development and our progress. And ultimately, I said this to a number of people, it's a really great profession and a really tough business. And this is one where we had to make a decision about how our football program was going to go forward. And ultimately, my decision was in the best interest of that program and making a change to bring in a new leader and take off where Walt has left us, and I think in a number of ways in a good place.
Thank you, Ryan. Please raise your hand to ask your questions. Rich, go ahead.
Ryan, was this a move just kind of expedite the process, get the ball moving early as opposed to late December or mid-December?
Yeah, Rich, good question. I've been on record in my 6 years as saying we generally wait until the end of the year and look at every aspect of our program. You know, football is a little bit of a different animal in that we've got an early signing period in December on the 15th. We cannot miss a recruiting cycle, especially now with the transfer legislation being such that we can fill class with more transfers that are eligible right away from other institutions, as well as junior college student athletes that can both come mid-year. So while I certainly would have hoped for better results and giving ourselves a chance to evaluate the entire body of work through 12 games, I felt like this was in the best interest of the future of the program to get ourselves to a position, especially as we start to think about rebuilding and building this roster. I thought that the timing was important, and now we'll go to search and over the next number of weeks have a good search process and ideally have somebody in place to finish out our recruiting in time for the early signing period if indeed we want to sign individuals in that time frame. So that was a consideration in this decision.
Kyle?
Where does the money come from to pay the buyout in the contract, and how is that allocated and dispersed?
Yeah, good question, Kyle. So the way that both Walt's contract and then Tommy Restivo's and then our other assistants are all written a little bit differently, but there's mitigation in all of those. So over the next month, we'll see if there are more changes to the staff. But speaking to Walt's in particular, if Walt is able to land another coaching opportunity, which we fully expect will occur at some level, whatever he makes in that opportunity will be mitigating and pulled out of the total amount owed to him. So that will help us. Those monies will come from some different sources, none of which are general operating funds. We have built up some reserves in unrestricted fundraising accounts and through other means that will allow us to pay off what will be for Walt. It's a 2-year payoff. So any money he makes in those 2 years gets deducted from the total amount owed to him. I would expect that we won't be paying anywhere near what that dollar amount is that is owed to him based on the contract. So those will come from funds that are not state or operating funds to our general ledger from a financial standpoint.
Joey, go ahead.
How much will the new head coach and the head coaching hire coincide with your search and trying to find a new conference?
Two really different processes. We've been working on the conference front for a while, and so I think it can certainly add. When we make a hire, it can certainly add. But I think what you've seen with the conference realignment pieces, Joe, is that things have been moving at a pretty rapid pace, and I think you're going to find some more information and some more updates even this week. And so, we're not going to just rush to hire a coach in anticipation that may help us in these conversations. But I think it could certainly help depending on who you hire. But I think they're two very different, different sort of scenarios.
Dylan, go ahead.
Thanks. Kind of on a similar note, when you're looking for the next head coach, what's your philosophy going into it as far as are you looking for another younger coach that can kind of have his own feeling in the locker room and someone that is kind of untested, or would you look for somebody with a little bit more experience that's kind of proven already has a proven record as a head coach?
Dylan, I missed a little bit of the first part of the question, but I think the back half of it probably, I think I can answer that, and it probably covers it. I'm wide open. I think when you go into a coaching search, you generally try to script some idea of where you want to land in terms of fit and culture. I think there's a lot of things that I think Coach Bell brought to this program. At the end of the day, we didn't meet some of our competitive goals in year 3, and we knew it was going to be a heavy lift in the first few years, just based on what our roster looked like, what some of the challenges were going to be coming in 2018. And so we knew there were going to be some hurdles. I think now the program's in a good position in that we've got a good foundation from a roster standpoint. We've got a lot of young talent. I think that there's some opportunity to really, in the recruiting aspect, take advantage of some talent in the transfer portal. And continue to recruit some 4-year kids as well. I'm interested in finding out from head coaches that are candidates for us how they want to rebuild our roster, what is important to them from a culture standpoint, how they're going to continue to represent our department and our university. Those things are really important. We're not a program that cuts corners. We try to do everything we can to make sure we're bringing in the right young men and the right group of coaches and support staff to make sure that they're having a good experience and getting themselves to an opportunity to be successful after the University of Massachusetts and earning that degree. So I think I don't have a framework for any particular characteristics or side of the ball or coaching expertise, or I think you go into it. Now, I think personality and fit and understanding the challenge here, the opportunity here, what you can do at UMass, what's going to fit from a recruiting standpoint. I think those are all important ingredients for our next head coach.
James, go ahead.
How did the conversation with Walt Bell go when you had to let him go? Was he understanding and receptive to your reasons?
Walt was great. He was very professional, as I would have expected. Walt's a true professional in that respect, and wanted to make sure that this program, which he cared for 2.5, 3 years, was in good stead as he leaves it. Asked if there was anything he could do to make sure that the transition went smoothly. A very conversational meeting. It was, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. It was good. It was healthy. I think he knows that we can win here, and I think he wants to make sure that as he departs, that the successful candidate that comes in after him has a chance to do just that. He's recruited most of this roster at this point, really wants these kids to have success, and I felt that yesterday for certain.
Matt, go ahead.
Right, I wanted to clarify one thing before moving on to my main question. You said the reason you did this early was because you couldn't afford to lose this recruiting class. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
I can, yeah.
Okay. Does that mean that you expect to have a coach that can be recruiting in this cycle in place in time? Is that seems are there people out there right now that you can get in quickly enough before a December signing date?
Yeah, that wasn't, just to be clear, that wasn't the main consideration in making the change. That was just speaking to one of the ingredients that's important to us. I think, Matt, where this is different than years past is this transfer legislation has now afforded FBS programs the opportunity to recruit pretty quickly to build the roster. So even if we find somebody, but let's just say for an arbitrary date by December 1st, that gives that person 2 weeks to jump in, probably not have a dearth of information on 4-year scholastic kids, other than the ones that we may already have in our pipeline and or who have verbally committed, but does give them a chance to get prepared from a transfer standpoint, and if they want to sign them early, in a junior college standpoint, if they want to sign them early. The benefit now in this year is they've got a COVID legislation that allows you to sign 7 additional spots on top of your 25 counters. And so if the 7 spots, if student athletes leave your program after the initial signing days of December 15th, they transfer, you can backfill those 7 roster spots. So you could essentially sign in this class 32 people, which for us, of a roster of 85 scholarships, and the fact that we're only in the mid 70s right now, it's a really important signing class for us. And so I want to make sure, I don't know that we're going to have candidates that, to your question, are going to be actively recruiting right now, because most of them that we're targeting are either in coaching positions of some sort at the moment. So I don't know that that's going to be so active now versus when they might free up from their current opportunity and be available to be our head coach and go out and recruit.
All right. And the main question that I wanted to ask is, not long ago, I asked you about why you were confident that that this time would be the time that UMass could get its footing, that UMass could get its going, and your primary answer was Walt Bell. Was what he brought to the table. What had you hoped that you'd see from him, whether it's from a coaching standpoint or an X's and O's standpoint, or some form of leadership and building that you didn't get that you need to have for the next person if this is going to work?
Yeah, I think it's again, Walt did so many really good things, and that's why I have had a lot of faith in what we were doing. Ultimately, I think from a talent and development standpoint, we had a lot of injuries this year, a tough schedule the first 9 weeks, and I think you've seen some of the challenges because of that schedule. We just weren't able to make progress in the way. And Matt, you did the article, and I'm in there saying years 1 and 2 were going to be challenging, and that was before the pandemic, right? And then year 3, we thought we could turn the corner. Ultimately, I think we just haven't turned it in a way that I felt we should have, and I think there's some, when we had injuries, there's some depth concerns there. There's some talent development. There's some coaching concerns, and I think that at the end of the day, in order to put us in a better position to have success moving forward, I just felt like a new voice and a new talent evaluator, talent developer was needed. And as much as I appreciate and feel like Walt did a number of things that we asked him to do, we've got to develop, and we've got to be competitive, and we've got to win games. And unfortunately, we weren't competitive in a number of our games this year. And then obviously some of the games that I felt like we had a really good chance to win, we weren't able to convert those to wins. And in year 3, you want to see that progress. And it didn't necessarily mean it had to be all wins, but had to be marked progress. And I didn't feel like we were meeting that objective any longer.
Kevin, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, how you doing, man?
Good.
So I actually have one for you and then one for Coach Miller. In terms of all the conference talk and, all that going on as well, how much did that affect this decision for you?
It really didn't. It really didn't, truthfully. I think this is a life cycle in your program that you just have to evaluate. Would take the factors that are unique to your program, and that's what I looked at. And I looked at where we were headed, and I just didn't feel like we were on the plus side of the equation in terms of all of those factors I've described. So the conference piece didn't really weigh into this decision ultimately.
Okay, thank you. And then Coach Miller, it's nice to meet you. You've obviously been here before, with the university, and it's obviously a very weird spot for players and coaches at this point. How do you approach these last, 2, 3, 4 weeks in the season, and kind of what's your main objective as well?
Well, I mean, it's I'll tell you the same thing I told the staff and I told the kids yesterday. I only care about the current day. I told them yesterday, all I care about is how we react and how we handle our emotions. Yesterday, this morning we had breakfast. We had a team meeting. I told them all I care about today is how we go to class, how we go to our tutor appointments, how we take care of treatment. And that's all I care about. And then tomorrow we'll have a team meeting. We'll address Tuesday. And that's kind of going to be my approach for the next 3 weeks. We're going to take it day by day. I am not worried about Saturday right now. I'm worried about the rest of today and tomorrow morning's practice. And honestly, guys, that's how it's going to be every day for the next 21 days. And my goal is to put a product out there, one that the kids can be proud of, their families can be proud of, and most importantly, the guys have worn this jersey before. Like that to me, being an alum, being connected to those guys, like when that whistle blows the next couple weekends, I just want to make sure those guys are proud of what we're doing on the field.
And just as a real quick follow-up to that, how was the mood or the mentality of the team, when you first met with them?
Well, I mean, like all of us, I mean, an emotional day, like however you slice it, you got to deal with those emotions. And as I told them, I said, outside of this building, nobody's really going to care about our emotions. So we need to deal with them, address them, and then we got to wake back up and attack the rest of this week. And today was a good start, to be honest. They had a good attitude at breakfast. And, I think they're hungry to win too. So whatever I can do in the next 3 weeks and the staff can do to help them get a win by any means necessary, that's what we're going to do.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Jill, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. This builds a little bit on what Kevin Stone just asked, but I understand that you're looking to the future of UMass athletics and of the team, but can you talk about the disruption at this point by taking out the coach, by having an interim coach, looking for a new coach? What how did you weigh your decision based on the disruption to the team and the 3 games left in the season? Is it, you won't know if it's worth it until, and again, I appreciate that you're working toward the future, but can you talk about that transition and that decision?
Yeah, this was I think I referenced enough of where I thought the program was, but I will tell you, I have a lot of faith in Coach Miller and the other guys in the staff room and what they have done with young men in our program. And these things often, when you make changes in the course of a year and there's still games played, I don't want this to be viewed as we're giving up on the last 3 weeks of the season. I think we've got a lot of opportunity for success. I told the young men in our program when I met with them yesterday that these next 3 weeks are 3 weeks that we can go out and compete and win. And ultimately, it's on them to stay together. We've got an interim head coach that was a captain on a team that went to a championship game 15 years ago, that has the respect of our program, the people, the men who have come through the program. And I certainly a lot of respect for Alex as he's come back to this university. And I feel like we have opportunities to win games down the stretch. But I also wanted to make sure that while we were playing out the rest of this year and giving our young men a chance to win and be competitive, that we were also looking at the future. And that's my that's my charge. I'm tasked with that and making sure that this program is in good footing moving forward. And so I felt like this was in the best interest of attacking both of those things, not giving up on the next 3 weeks, but also having an eye on the future and the success of this program in all facets.
Howard, go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Thanks. Ryan, do you feel that the resources with the football program are sufficient to win right now? Or do you feel like when you bring in a new coach, things have to change a little and you have to maybe allocate more resources to the team?
Howard, good question. I said this in my video that I made a couple weeks ago. When I got here, we were about a $7.5 million football budget. We're now over $10 million, and we've grown our revenues in a way that allows us to invest in the program in a deeper way. We're definitely going to have to increase our coaching salary pool. That is of prime importance. We've lost under Coach Bell and under Coach Whipple some really talented coaches, and it's not all because of money. Some of it's because of responsibility and role and things like that. But I think we've got to be more competitive in the way that we compensate our coaching staff. So there will be an upgrade in the pool, just like we upgraded it in our change 3 years ago. We added another $300,000 to $400,000 into the coaching staff pool. We'll do a similar upgrade. When I talk with candidates, they'll know what that pool is. We're working on that now to determine exactly what we think we can fund based on future revenues. But that there will be an upgrade in that respect. In every other way, we've upgraded our budget. And I think just the 7.5 to 10.5 or thereabouts tells that story. But everything from nutrition, what we've done in our weight room, in our fueling station, the way that our guys travel, the way that they're outfitted, the way that our coaches are able to recruit, host people in official visits. Now, a lot of things have changed in the last 3 years. The recruiting landscape has completely changed. The official visit landscape has changed. You're doing things different in a number of ways from an operational standpoint that will change the fiscal nature of what we do in football as well. But there is a commitment, not only that we've come up with in athletics, but also as a university. And I think, where that's seen the most is the way that this university has allowed us to build the facilities we've built, to make the upgrades we've made, to take on some debt. to be creative with the ways that we've been able to pay for these things, like the indoor facility that came online 2 years ago. Those are difference makers. And we knew we were going to do that when we hired Coach Bell, but now it's come to reality and fruition. And look, we've been living as an independent for 5 years now, and we know our financial picture. We know where we can drive more revenues, and we're going to continue to do that, and that will all get reinvested back into the program. So I think whenever you make a coaching change, if you're staying where you are, you're not addressing what the needs are of the program and ultimately of that next head coach. And we're fully aware that we need to continue to invest more money, especially salaries, to our next leader and the next staff.
Joey, go ahead.
I also have a question for both of you guys, but I'll start with Ryan. You talked about the timeline you put in place for Walt, with the first 2 years kind of being more developmental years and rebuild years, but that third year of where you wanted to see things changing for the better and kind of more of an increase. Do you know the timeline that you have in your mind right now for the new head coach?
Yeah, I think the landscape's changed because of this transfer legislation. I think you can remake your roster a lot more quickly and a lot differently than you could when Walt got here 3 years ago. And I think Walt would have been advantaged and we would have been advantaged as a program by the fact that you could take transfers and they'd be eligible immediately. But that change just occurring over the last year has totally changed the expectation that I think all of us should have for this program. I don't think this is the rebuild that it was 3 years ago, where we just didn't have the talent level, didn't have the ability to bring in 20, 21, 22-year-old student athletes that could play right away. If you've looked at who we've played this year, Coach Miller's offensive line is a good example. Mostly first and second year student athletes, freshmen, redshirt sophomores. I mean, that's where a lot of our roster, that's who's getting reps right now across our roster. And we've got to add some veteran to that, some veteran elements to that. And now the transfer legislation allows us to do that. So I think we can, and that's honestly, I think that's another reason for why I think this is in the best interest of the program. This is a crucial year for us to pivot and get this recruiting class really fortified in a way that can help us, because it's a chance to get potentially 32 new bodies, new faces, new student athletes in here that can add value to our program, especially from a competitive standpoint. And that's absolutely going to be instrumental to our success over the next 2 or 3 years. But I think it's a heavy lift, but it's not from a roster standpoint the same heavy lift that Walt faced 3 years ago. And Alex may be able to give you a little bit more feedback on that, just being in the trenches, especially from a recruiting standpoint, what they've seen and how to build this next class.
Yeah,
go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
No, you can talk. I can ask it after. Don't worry.
No, I mean, just to build off what Ryan said, I mean, it's a unique situation. It's a situation that a lot of the group of 5 schools are going to have to take advantage of. But on the flip side, I think you have to balance developmental kids versus veteran kids and mix your roster. But there is a way to get a quick influx of veterans through the transfer portal, and whoever the next head coach is going to have to do that to get a good product on the field, and to keep working with these young guys who are doing a great job, working hard, that I think their best football is ahead of them. But, I'll certainly mix in with some veteran presence, some guys that have played some college football, I think will be a good mix going forward for whoever's here.
Other than your day-by-day approach, what are the bigger changes that you kind of hope to bring to this program in the 21 days or the 3 weeks that you do have to finish out the season?
It's the same thing I said before. I want these guys to take it day by day, enjoy each day, play for each other. The one thing about this place is we're one giant family. I say to kids all the time, I've had the last name Miller for 37 years, and I've had Massachusetts football family for 19 years now. And as long as our kids approach that as a family atmosphere and we do things for each other in the next 3 weeks, That's the most important thing to me. This place, I don't think anybody on this call right now understands how important this place is to me. So making sure those kids feel that for 3 weeks and making sure they play for each other for 3 weeks is all I really care about.
We'll take a couple more. Dylan, go ahead.
All right, let me know if my mic's not working. I think we're good though. All right, perfect. So, Ryan, I guess my next question for you would be, what's your message, to the seniors and the graduate students that have been through a couple head coaches now, never really had any consistency there, never really had a chance to be that competitive with the football program, and then also, what's the message to recruits and to freshmen that are maybe not feeling confident that they will have consistency themselves as they go through school here?
Yeah, good question, Dylan. I think the message, we've had a challenging 3 or 4 years in this program, but I think everybody across college athletics, just given the nature of the pandemic and what's happened, it has certainly impacted our football program as much as any other program of our 21 sports, just by virtue of they were the first ones to go out and try to compete last fall. The rules on our campus at that time were really challenging in terms of navigating team travel, testing. We were only able to play 4 games. The good news is that all those student athletes that were here last year got the year back from an eligibility standpoint. I can't say enough to the young men in our program, especially those that have been here, and there's a handful that were here when we made a coaching change 3 years ago. I told them yesterday, I appreciate the work that they've put in. I appreciate their dedication, their commitment, their loyalty. At the end of the day, football ends at some point for everybody. And if we're doing our job correctly, Alex spoke to the family piece, but if we're doing our job correctly, they've got a meaningful degree that will give them purpose, that they'll be able to use from a top 25 public research university, go out and do great things to support themselves, their families, and what have you. And so, my message is always, it's the same thing I say in recruiting. Nobody wants to believe football is going to end, but that's what we're selling. We're selling the university. The football piece hasn't been perfect the last 3 or 4 years. I fully acknowledge that. I've been here during that time, and I certainly take ownership of a number of the reasons for that. But I also want them to know that all their work hasn't been for naught, and that that it's appreciated. They're part of our family, and the ones that are younger, that are questioning what this program can be, I don't think anybody that's been associated with this program doesn't think this program can win. This program can win. And we just have to everything has to come together in a lot of ways at the same time in a really perfect storm. And I think obviously the leader of the program is probably the most key ingredient to that success. And that's what, this gives us hope that we're going to go find somebody that can build this program to the heights that we all want to see it, to be competitive, to win games, to graduate really powerful young men that can go out and do great things when they settle into whatever community they do. So those are the messages that we are instilling and trying to perpetuate in the program, and just appreciate the work that our young men are doing every day, and asking them to keep their head down, control what they can control, make sure that we're doing the right things on and off the field every day. That's important. That's an important piece to the fabric of Massachusetts football.
All right, since we're coming up to our end of our allotted time, Matt, please close us out.
Ryan, you said the heights that you all wanted to get to. Can you, with as much specificity as possible, give a feel for what if the next coaching candidate walks in and asks you, what should success look like here, in terms of what is that? It's not as easily defined without a conference right now. How much winning Are you expecting teams? Are you expecting from your football program? What is a successful UMass football program in its current form look like?
Yeah, good question. I don't think it's much changed. I think the expectation just generally is that we want to build a bowl eligible program that's getting to 6, 7, 8 wins a year. And I think that for us, it's, the first few years of independent play, we didn't have a lot of choice from a scheduling standpoint. We had to take games. We couldn't be as strategic as maybe I would have wanted to be. I think now, next year, we only have 5 home games. This year was a mix of Power 5 and 2 FCSs and some other group of 5s. I think, next year presents some challenges in that we only have 5 home games, but we only have Texas A&M from a Power 5 standpoint. We do have some other opponents rolling in that I think we can be competitive with. I think in future years, if you look at the way we've built our schedules, there are years in the next 2 or 3 where we've got 4 or 5 MAC schools on the schedule, much more similar institutions. Obviously, UConn continues to be a schedule filler for us. We like playing Army, obviously, but that's a challenge playing against them and how talented they are and the success that they've had recently under Coach Monken. So there's always going to be a healthy mix, but I think the expectation is to get to 6, 7, 8 wins, Matt, build that winning culture, that winning program at FBS, all the things that will come with that, the pride that comes with that in our fan base, in our alumni, in the way that we're able to generate revenue from that, from a fundraising standpoint. I think that's what we're all yearning for. And 6 years in, I certainly thought that we could get there a lot sooner than we have to date. And but I'm not quitting on getting there because I think it's real. I think we can do it. And
is that
so
an every year thing? When you're talking bowl eligible, 6, 7, 8 wins, is that something you think should be year in, year out? Is that the top of the cycle?
That's certainly the goal. Yeah, it's certainly the goal. But I think every year you have to go in hopeful that's the achievable plan, that's possible. And again, I can't speak to this enough. The ability to remake your roster through in different ways than we've ever known before, it can be an advantage here. If we have some injuries, if we lose some individuals, if student athletes transfer out of our institution, you can fill in holes in a way that's much different than you could in the past. And you have to have a mix, as Alex said, of developmental and bringing in those that can contribute right away. But yeah, I think we should always have hope. In August at camp, I think I want to have a program that everybody's saying, boy, I think there's 6 or 7 wins out there if we play good quality football the way that we know we can. And so that's certainly the goal.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Coach Miller. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This concludes our call today. Have a good one.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.